Okay, hello. There's a lot of messages and off topic, so I'm going to take a look at those. Where does it start? Oh, there we go. Wait, did this guy delete his chat message? I remember I saw this morning. I didn't see a message from him. Do not delete your messages, guys. Okay, yeah, the UK guy got coronavirus. This guy has role now, yeah. Right, and here's where the conversation starts. Social life. Okay. Okay, so that's my reply from the very beginning. Oh, hello, Jode Singh. I'm catching up on this discussion. Make this a little bit bigger. Yeah, I'm gonna go with this side. Over. Alright, that looks pretty good. What's the question? This is a reasonable response logically, but it lacks sympathy. Mine's not particularly sympathetic, like in an overt way, but mine tries to get at the issue, and like I brought up that we might actually agree on values. Like disliking a situation is, if someone says the situation is X and you think X is awful, that doesn't mean you disagree with values on them. I should link this in. Copy. I'm gonna get my phone. I can read the newest messages on my phone just to see if anyone's actually talking to me in the channel. Off topic. Oh yeah, Freeze just liked the stream right before I did. But I didn't see it. I see it on my phone now. That's not the goal of PUA. PUAs in general are more honest on average, in my opinion. And there's various honesty advocacy in their material. I definitely wouldn't call them like perfectly honest or anything, just above average. I think one of the things people don't like about PUA is that they reveal and analyze how manipulative normal people are all the time. And they don't want to face the world being that way, because people are always saying just be yourself or whatever, but they don't act that way. They act like manipulators and social climbers. So they're lying. And people wish it was true that just being yourself, quote, was like actually good advice. They wish to live in the world that people pay lip service to. It sounds nice to them. The actual world is different, I believe, and PUA believes. And people often shoot the messenger. I don't think PUA is introducing manipulation into the equation. I think that they've just carefully analyzed what's actually effective, what people actually respond positively to. And a lot of their advice is to actually become that. Like, don't just fake it, but actually make changes in your life to better yourself or to become more what people want. Like, the best way to have interesting stories is to have lived through them, not to make them up. It's fairly typical PUA advice that it's okay to tell a few stories that aren't your own at the beginning to help you get started, but you should be moving away from that and getting your own stories and using your own material. A lot of what happens to people is there are guys that have value. They're not like awful people. They've got decent jobs, they're decent personalities, they're not mean, etc. And they have a really hard time in the dating world because they're making certain social errors. And if you fix those social errors, they can do a lot better without massive changes to the rest of their life. I mean, I don't recommend being what society wants. I don't recommend normal dating, but most people want to do it, and it's just, I think it's interesting to understand how it works, and it's worth having some awareness of what's going on there. Some POA people also have that attitude. They don't like it, and some of them won't do it, or they just get a girlfriend and leave the game rather than dating a lot of women. Anyway, what I was saying is, there's a lot of guys who, other than certain social mistakes, are decent guys and could do pretty well at dating. But they're being unsuccessful and unhappy because of those social errors. And UA can help with that. And it involves some, like, quote, personality changes. Like, it's not like you just purely communicate better about what you already are. There are some ways that it's suggested to change so people like you better and you fit in better. But they don't necessarily have to be really thorough or far reaching or like a total personality overhaul. You just have to fix some specific things that really alienate people and turn them off, and you can do a lot better. So, like, one of the common myths is that you're supposed to chase women and put them on a pedestal. That's romanticized and advocated on TV and everything. But in real life, women don't like that, and they will reject you for doing it. It makes you look weak, needy, desperate, and below them, but women want to date up. This is one of those uncomfortable facts, is that the vast, vast majority of women want to date someone who has higher social status than them, more power, more contacts, more wealth, all that kind of stuff. But they don't have to be ahead of the woman in every category, but the women want to date someone who is overall above them. And there are a lot of guys who are, in fact, above a lot of women, but they don't act like it. Like, there's women that all they have for them is a few more years of beauty left, and that's all that's really going for them in their lives. And there's some who are a bit better than that, like decent personalities and stuff, but they're not, like, super impressive. Like, they're not way above the guys. But so many people see the woman as, oh, she's so pretty and she's better than him. How did he get a woman like that? Or he shouldn't, you know? So guys need to understand their own value and portray it. I don't mean the middle of the bell curve. I mean 99%, probably more. I won't get into non-straight, I guess, but I don't think it really changes it. I think that people dramatically underestimate how widespread certain culture things are. We all grow up in the same world and we have certain things in common. Like, one of the things people have in common is they have an intuitive sense of someone's social status. They judge other people by something that you could call social status. They try to look at where they fit into the social hierarchy and where others fit into it. They might not use those words, they often don't. And not everyone judges social status in the same way, like subcultures vary. But I think it's more or less universal that people look to social status stuff. Most people who say my personal experiences with women are different do not provide any sort of objective evidence. Like, it's just a few anecdotes that were interpreted by them. So it's not just that it's anecdotal evidence, it's that they don't provide the raw facts to allow for a PUA interpretation of what's going on. When you provide facts as already interpreted from your blue pill perspective or non-PUA perspective, you can already have distorted or biased things in a way that hides the PUA facts. If you're more specific, I might be able to tell you some of the things to look for that you might have missed. Okay, so I think if I go... Oh wait, is it like option click or something? Yeah, there we go. Okay, now I can go to the other channel and go back. Oh, it's just the bot. Scientists and engineer women. Philosophers who are actually good. Okay, so Ayn Rand. Right, but is there a second female philosopher is actually good? Scientists and engineers, you can often find some traits that you like and get along with them better in some ways. Let's not discuss Ingrak. You can find women who are willing to have more logical discussions. But it doesn't mean that they're sort of the way their memes are built. People call it things like hardwiring, but it's memes that they learned in early childhood. It doesn't mean that those are fundamentally different, and that those aren't an ongoing problem they have to deal with. It's very similar to how more or less everyone has emotional issues of some sort. And there's a variety of types of emotional issues that are really common, like disliking criticism or getting angry in situations that do not merit anger, which is more or less all of them. So, broadly, people prefer intellect, wealth, or looks according to their social circle, according to their subculture of what impresses their friends and other people whose opinions they respect. So it's related to social status. It's just not necessarily the same social status that Brad Pitt or Angelina Jolie has. There's different dimensions of social status. Like some people see Richard Dawkins as higher status than Brad Pitt, and some people vice versa. There's significant commonalities across different types of social status and like how social status hierarchies work, but some of them place fairly low value on looks. But you might be surprised by how much you can take a bunch of Richard Dawkins fans and they'll be impressed by a woman wearing makeup and dyeing her hair blonde. And you find a lot of guys, when they get power, wealth, social status, or something in any field, they often turn to fairly mainstream types of status and what sorts of women they want. Like Jeff Bezos, you would think is a businessman who cares about nerdy stuff, but then he goes after a large-breasted blonde who is on TV when he got the chance. He still wanted that. He blew up his family over it and lost billions of dollars over it. And those kinds of things are pretty common to see, like scientists and intellectuals and businessmen and so on wanting those kinds of things from women. Even in the you see also the MGTOW and incel communities, that kind of people. Often they're quite picky, like about the women they want, and they want a pretty woman, and they're like they can be quite scornful of fat chicks and stuff, which is interesting when they sort of have given up on being able to get a woman, the incel people, but then they're actually rejecting a bunch of women. They actually want is a woman meeting certain criteria, not just any woman. And the criteria are not just personality and having conversations. Yeah, we can improve our emotional reactions. We can make progress on this stuff. We can make changes. Um, Most people aren't very good at that, and their opinion of how much they've changed is often a lot higher than how much they've actually changed. It's much more common that people think they're better and so clever, unbiased, and rational, and so on, than to actually be that way. Yeah, family-oriented and open to criticism are generally better than focusing on makeup and looks, I think. Better type of person to be around. But it doesn't mean uh, all the social status stuff goes away. It doesn't mean PUA stuff stops working on them. I mean, it depends on your goals in life. No, I mean, you can use PUA principles when doing salary negotiations or trying to get investors in a company. Understanding social dynamics matters to career promotion, social networking, etc. Personally, I reject these things. Like, I have not tried to climb the philosophy social hierarchy. And I'm paying the price. Like, I do not have a large fan base. A lot of people will not listen and will not debate or discuss or respond to criticism or questions simply because of social status. A lot of people, intellectuals and rich people and businessmen, gate access to them and gate their attention based not on argument quality but on social status. They don't know how to gate on argument quality very well. That's one of the things I've written about in Paths Forward and tried to explain to people how to do that. How to filter your interactions with people in a more objective and rational way rather than using social status and typical mainstream gatekeeping, which are really, really irrational as ways to do philosophy. However, because they don't listen to me, they don't find out that there's a better way from me. It's hard to. If people aren't listening to you for a bad reason, it's hard to correct them because they're not listening. So there's various downsides, but I do not like the social hierarchy in those things. I don't want to. I do my own thing. It's I don't know how you found this stream or what you're familiar with for background, Jode, but I see characters like Howard Rourke from The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand as a role model. Another thing about PUA is there isn't just one way to apply it. Like, there's certainly some standard stuff you can do in nightclubs and for like early interactions with women you're trying to potentially date. And there's some standard advice for how to do that. But in general, if you understand the social dynamics of a situation, if you understand what's going on and how people are acting and why, you have many options for how to deal with that, how to react. I think therapists in general are terrible. I do not respect the field. That doesn't mean no one should go to them. I think they have like very mainstream ideas, and some people are like dumber than common sense or need someone to remind them of common sense. Um, so some people can get value from therapists, but overall I quite dislike it, and I don't think they're very wise. And I think they're very conformist. I don't think they know red pill ideas. In terms of experiments, I'm not aware of anything that is like a serious challenge to PUA. And there have been many, many tests in things like nightclubs by PUA people. Like, they've done a lot of trying out different approaches and documenting what they found and trying to use the scientific method. Although it's certainly not like double-blind controlled trials, but I think in general it's no worse than, and in some ways better than, a lot of psychology research, which also is not actually similar to the scientific method used by physics. Okay, yeah, some bad content, some good content. Agree. Well, no, because there's also day game. Um, People have tried this stuff at restaurants, libraries, pet shops, out on the street, etc. Um, at universities, in class, all sorts of situations. There's actually though different advice. Like, there's broadly night game advice and then day game advice, and the tactics are a bit different. But the underlying social dynamics are the same. It's just adapting how you handle them to a different situation. Day game is less aggressive and lower energy. There's some online, but there's certainly like people who are good on Tinder or something, but people want an IRL girlfriend, not an online girlfriend. But there's guides to things like flirting over texts. But talking to women online too much can get you friend zoned. Being somewhat decisive, somewhat early on with IRL escalations is important if you want a sexual relationship. I mean, the idea that PUA dehumanizes women reminds me of the idea that science demystifies the world and ruins the beauty. which is something Feynman disagreed with. Like, cold logical analysis of things is not the enemy. Oh yeah, social dynamics certainly apply to online spaces. The PUA community is uh, reasonably focused on dating stuff, and the other social dynamics communities that deal with things like business and um, social climbing in general, and like how to win friends and influence people, and general psychology stuff, are broadly not great and often a bit naive or fooled by things. So like, yeah, in my opinion, the PUA people actually have a lot of insight, but they're not generalists. And then the other people are wrong a lot, so there isn't good enough social dynamics analysis of the world in general. It doesn't exist. There aren't enough people doing it. But it could be done. You could take a lot of ideas from the PUA community and adapt them. I haven't like thoroughly searched, but for example, I'm not aware of any essay that takes the law of least effort and then tries to apply it to other contexts. I don't think social scientist credentials would actually be useful anyways. I don't think the things they teach in school that let you call yourself a quote social scientist are productive. If you wanted credentials, I think like having learned some philosophy would be better. But it has to be the right philosophy because most of it's trash. But like somehow or other, you have to find out something about rational thinking and bias and stuff like that. You want to be effective at intellectual topics, which are the kinds of things I try to teach about. Okay, so one thing I noticed about this discussion right away is Wisp just said these little tiny bit right here. And then there's all these messages in response. So for one thing, both Freeze and Justin are signaling low social status. They're being highly reactive and high effort. But for another, they don't know what Wisp thinks, and they're not able to customize what they're saying very well to what he thinks. So it can be better to like wait for responses depending on your goal. One reason for talking a lot is if your main purpose is your own learning, like you just want to write notes, but you don't brainstorm and write in a journal by yourself. So you get this prompt from Wisp, and then you actually write something. That can be beneficial to yourself. Like anything that gets you actually writing, there's a lot of benefit there. But from the perspective of dealing with Wisp and benefiting him, or if it's not about yourself, then it's too much too soon while not knowing what he actually wants from the conversation. There's not enough of a back and forth going on so far. It's a bit early to conclude that he's thinking of a straw man, because we don't really know what he thinks. Wisp did not explain his reasoning yet. But it's perfectly reasonable for Freeze's own education to be speculating about things and to jump ahead and come up with guesses and try to figure out what's going on. But it's like they're worthwhile thoughts to know that this is a possible thing that might be going on. it's premature to specifically attribute that to Wisp and like reach a conclusion. Yeah, lots of the stuff is not gender specific. But some is, because there are definitely gender roles, and dating is maybe the area where gender roles matter the most and have the most prominence. Maybe parenting is, but dating's high on the list. You see low effort equals better, that formula. In a lot of contexts, like that's not just dating. Oh yeah, this typo. Let's see. What was the blog post? 2279. Yeah, I think it's a fax. I'll change that. I'm not sure what you mean about geniuses. I don't know, sometimes geniuses are like socially allowed to put in a lot of work and respected for it. It depends on the situation. It's no, I don't want off topic for stream questions. FI or subscribers would be good places to ask stream questions. Or just a channel that's not busy. A lot of what people are successful at is what they find easy or intuitive somehow, or they figure it out during childhood or something. So then what happens is a lot of people look at it and they're like, that would be hard for me, it would take a lot of work for me. And then that guy's doing it without that much effort and they're really impressed. Um, but that same guy would be bad at other things, or it would take a lot of effort for him to do other things. And the person who's so impressed, they're good at something else. They just don't. There's a lot of things people are good at that they don't count as a skill. Like they remember all sorts of things celebs said, or they like. People are so impressed by memorizing digits of pi. If you can memorize like 20 digits of pi, people will be like, "Oh my god, you're such a genius." But then they'll memorize like more than 20 words of song lyrics. A lot more. They'll memorize like thousands of words of song lyrics and movie quotes and all sorts of celeb gossip facts. So it's not that they're bad at memory, like they can remember a lot of stuff. It's that they direct it to stuff that they don't respect as intellectual. Like they sort of don't respect their own interests and their own hobbies. This is very vague. He's not going into details about what he means. It'd be better if people would slow down and make a discussion tree step by step. Music? I'm not that into music, but I tend to like electronic stuff. Like trance or electronic dance music or whatever. I tend not to be a big fan of lyrics. Like, using the voice as an instrument is okay, but when they're actually trying to say a bunch of words that are supposed to matter, I generally don't like that. Right, this is so vague. Like, there's so much to unpack here. Um, like, behind this statement, there's like books worth of ideas. There's so much cultural. Our culture has very strong opinions about this that he's referring to, but he's not going into very much detail about what they are or why he agrees with them or how they apply to this. It's this very high level reference. And if you want to get somewhere in the conversation, you have to start unpacking something and getting into more details. You're not going to be able to argue with him about this directly without breaking it into parts and then like talking about some parts, like less stuff at once. This is too much stuff to deal with all at once. And like these assertions aren't going to change his mind. They're just giving him your conclusions. But they're not teaching him to understand PUA. Like, he's not very familiar with it, and you're not giving him much info. I mean, you are giving these like quotes, but I don't know if he even wants to read that much. He's barely talked, and there's nothing that indicates he's someone who's like interested enough in learning, like that you have his attention, that he wants to read a bunch of material. Like, you haven't caught his interest before giving him the material. And the material is not like organized as part of some learning plan where he actually has a goal of his own that he's pursuing, and then you're helping him with it. There's a lot of reasons to do this. Like, I think that it's not really about Wisp. This is about their own thinking. Like, they're interested in this, the topic came up, so that enables them to write and think about it. And that they have more trouble doing this without someone having brought it up who's sort of on the other side. Not really. Like, you can take social dynamics concepts and they could help women. And you can take the male version of PUA, and if a woman learns that, she can understand dating better. It'll give her an edge. But there isn't much material that'll help women with dating, like directly. From that's like red pill. What women have is stuff like Cosmo. Like, women get inundated with all sorts of dating advice and sex advice and relationship advice. Just very normal for women to have all sorts of information about this stuff and read a lot about it, which is it's a huge imbalance. When men start actually learning about how dating works and social dynamics and so on, they get attacked as like weirdos, and people, PUA has this bad reputation. But women are always reading shit about it and talking about it with their friends, and they get so much information and so much practice. So the information imbalance is really unfair. Like, male PUAs, I think some of the better PUAs have sort of said that their social understanding and intuition is only on par with women. Like it's sort of like they caught up to high status women who are good at understanding social situations, but they're not really ahead. They're just ahead of all the guys who are like way behind women. They definitely pass women by a lot in terms of conscious understanding and ability to put into words what's going on in social situations. But they can also still, despite all that study, be less calibrated than a lot of what women do naturally, because women spend so much more of their lives on this stuff in general. Not all women, like there's scientist women who are like more focused on that, but most women are just a lot more exposed to this stuff than most men. Red pill is one of the labels for the community and the way of thinking that's closely related to PUA. It's like seen through the mainstream normie conformist stuff and seeing the matrix, seeing how reality really is, seeing the real world behind all the lies. So seeing the truth of the social dynamics through all the crap people say, cutting through all the bullshit. It's kind of like getting the behind the scenes or insider perspective. Yes, it's a Matrix reference. It's not a joke. Like, the community actually uses that terminology a lot. There's a subreddit called the Red Pill that's popular. Like, with this, you must be invited. Message them on it. Jesus. I thought I was already subscribed. I like okay. Maybe it's like the Red Pill. They were already quarantined. Oh, this is it. That's the wrong one. See, look. 1.7 million subscribers, 130,000 currently on the site for the Red Pill subreddit. The one I tried to join is just some other one. Doesn't matter if they let me or not. But so this shit's popular. Like that's a lot of people, and this is with Reddit suppressing it. This community is quarantined, just like fucking R the Donald. Like being a fucking Trump supporter is quarantined on Reddit. Admin takeover imminent. Mod team tour shill edition. Like Reddit's absolutely fucking the Trump subreddit. It's worse than that though. I got this new post on my blog today. from someone. Here it is. Reddit to start banning users based on their upvotes. There's an article, and it's horrifying. Anyway, so if you like quarantine content, such as pro-Trump articles or red pill articles, you may end up banned on Reddit. I think it might be time to stop commenting on Reddit ever. But yeah, they call themselves the Red Pill. There's good info on Reddit. Like, even if I stop commenting, I'll still read it sometimes. There's a lot of flaws. Like, a lot of the subreddits are moderated a lot, but they don't actually openly admit it. There can be, like, heavy biases about what's allowed on the front page. Like, it's supposed to be user-generated content, and it's just, like, the votes decide. Except it's often not actually that way. Anyway. Yeah, and Twitter, meanwhile, has an official policy of censoring people who disagree with the authorities about coronavirus. And Facebook's a fucking mess, and social media is so broken. YouTube censorship is awful. They're demonetizing like everything about coronavirus from reasonable people. It's kind of disturbing and worrying. I post on my own website, but there's so many more people on the giant sites that are getting heavily thought controlled, thought policed. So these PUA ideas are some of the ideas you're not allowed to think. They're crime think. You're not allowed to think society works this way and talk about it. Like, it's not actually illegal yet. And maybe it won't be, but it's getting suppressed by a lot of strong social and cultural mechanisms and by institutions and companies and stuff. Yeah, this is like Cosmo is just one of the well-known names, but there's a lot of other ones that have somewhat different audiences. Like Cosmo's like really blatant, so some people don't like Cosmo, but they often get information elsewhere that also has relationship advice, social dynamics advice, etc. There's a lot more of that stuff for women than men. Um, right, so if she's doing a frame control attempt on you, she's not trying to find the truth. And if you respond, you're not a philosopher, you're not doing truth seeking, want to try being rational, she will not date you and she will not be friends with you in general. Which is fine, there's nothing wrong with that. You can respond that way if you want to, but if you're trying to like date normal women, that's not an effective response. I don't think that you're wronging a woman if you play the games she's playing. Like if she wants to do certain social dynamics, she can't say, "Oh, how immoral, you treated me according to the rules of the game I was playing." You know? Like I don't think it's unfair to women if they're trying to socially entrap you and test you and then you respond by passing their tests. Like that seems reasonable. Is you're not supposed to debate women who do not want to debate you. Women are not looking for debates in dating, flirting contexts. or in almost all contexts. So if the woman doesn't want to debate, you shouldn't debate her. Like, women will trick you, they'll act like they want to debate when they don't, and if you do it, they'll punish you because you did the wrong reaction. Yeah, I mean, if you only want to deal with philosophers, you can respond like a philosopher and filter out almost everyone. You're welcome to do that. But it's perfectly reasonable for there to exist advice for non-philosophers who just want to get a woman. Well, okay, how do you know it's not truth-seeking? You test it. You get asked hundreds of these questions from women, and you try different responses, and you see which ones go over well. And when you give like literal, truthful answers, they go over poorly. That's how you know it's not truth-seeking. Because over and over you get punished when you treat it as truth-seeking. Women test to check your congruence with your social status. So you actually live up to the social status that you're conveying to them. Um, is it a facade that falls away under pressure, or is that just who you are in a deep way? So even when you're tested, you just naturally continue acting the same way. Women are trying to look out for fakers, for people who are pretending to be confident when they're not, or pretending to be rich, powerful, etc. when they're not. Women don't want to be fooled. That's why they test. So it's a little like grilling someone in a job interview. Like, why would you ask hardballs in a job interview? Because you're trying to catch the fakers who won't actually be able to do the job. Women want to catch the people who will be bad boyfriends early on, or bad lovers, or whatever. This kind of question, it's not getting into the meat enough to actually understand things. And it's bringing up like more complicated concepts like algorithm and fixed, both of which are very complicated things to actually understand what you're talking about. So it's like taking this thing you don't know much about and then connecting it to this high level concept with that also not he doesn't know much about. And that's not he's not going to learn a lot this way. Like no one here has really gotten to the fundamentals of what we're talking about or why, and then what is actually being disagreed about. Like the whole conversation, I think what I said at the beginning would have been more effective at trying to figure out like where he's coming from and clarify. It's not just women, it should color your view of everyone in every setting, more or less. Like some of it at least. Some of it's sex specific and some isn't. Some is dating specific and some isn't. But a lot of it is just general purpose. Like social dynamics happen in this Discord chat all the time. They're happening throughout this discussion, the one I'm reading right now. Um, they are coloring what happens in this social interaction. Like this is a social interaction between Wisp, Freeze, and Justin. Social dynamics are applying to how people react to it and take it. It happens all the time, even in philosophy communities. Even in the middle of what looks like a philosophy discussion, often social dynamics play a larger role than truth seeking. This is it's like a this is a hard topic to start with for someone who isn't already open to it. Like some people like they want to hear this stuff. They're like, shit, dating's not working. What's going wrong? I don't understand. Where can I get better advice? They're like looking for it. And in that case you can engage with the PUA community and find it helpful and stuff. But if you're initially hostile to it, it's a bad place to start learning philosophy. Like it would be better if he worked on idea trees and tried to learn something that's more appealing to him first, and then get like the learning method down after a bunch of practice on different topics, and have more positive experiences here, and like uh, and then like approach some of the stuff later when you have like 5 conversations that worked really well and you have a bunch of tools and things in common with people here. And but it's generally hard to get people to do that. Like they'll talk when they hate something, like things like this grab their attention because of the conflict. But if it's just like learning in general, a lot of times people are less interested, so that's very awkward. Like I've had a lot of people come to FI and they say they're interested in epistemology and rationality, and then they start talking about politics, and then they get offended by right-wing politics, and then they quit and leave. I'm like, why wouldn't you just talk about epistemology? And they're like actually resistant to talking about philosophy, but they seek out the politics that they then fight over and get mad about. I don't know why, but people do it with PUA too. It's a like hot button issue that offends a lot of people. These are not PUA articles. I don't know why they're being linked here. Oh, curious thoughts about rational ways of relating to each other. Sure. I'm not an expert on East Asian and African cultures and how PUA applies. From what I've seen, it applies. Like I know I've seen a bit about Japan, for example. And what I haven't seen is any indication that it's actually different there. But a lot of the PUA stuff I've read about travel involves like Eastern Europe, for example, and maybe South America. But I don't remember reading as much about Asia, and definitely not Africa. Oh, also Western Europe, sure. Yeah, plenty of people get sort of like close to the point of divorce. Like, if you think about a bell curve and then you draw a line that's like where people divorce, there's going to be like a bunch of people who are like near that point. Like, more people are going to be close to a divorce but don't get divorced than actually get divorced, you would think. If there's a bell curve of how good the marriages are. Like, okay, how do we do this? X. I'm going to draw you guys a little bit of a chart. Um, okay, screen mirroring. Here we go. Oh, I'm getting my iPad. I just wanted to connect it. All right, now I have an Apple Pencil. Okay, so we have like a bell curve. All right, very perfect bell curve. Then we draw like a line. Right, divorce. And this is like marriage. happiness. Okay. So, like, these people get divorced. Get divorced. But then there's, like, these people close to slash unhappy. So the y-axis is, wait, oh, it's marriage unhappiness. It's marriage unhappiness versus amount of people. So the y-axis is amount of people, and the x-axis is marriage unhappiness. Yeah, there we go. So the divorcing people are the area under the curve. Let me change colors. So the divorcing people are the area under the curve like this. And then the unhappy but not divorcing people are the area under the curve like this. So the green is unhappy but they don't get a divorce, and then the blue is actually getting a divorce. This is a very loose approximation, but it's very plausible that there's more people who are sort of close to a divorce than actually divorced. X equals 0 is the perfect couple right down here. Yeah. Well, there's definitely variance in real life. This is just an approximation. But there's like an average unhappiness of the people who get divorced. But there's certainly other factors that affect it, like whether they have children. People will put up with more unhappiness for the children. That's pretty common. But I mean, you can make a better version of this model and you can add in a bunch of factors, and I think the conclusion won't be dramatically changed. Yeah, this is called X Mirage. It's an AirPlay server. There's other ones like Reflector and Air Server. So it's just broadcasting from my iPad over Wi-Fi. Okay. File version will close after 45 seconds, lol. Whatever, I'm done with it. Yeah, I have not played BioShock, but I'm very doubtful that it's very accurate. I believe Justin might have played Bioshock, and also knows Ayn Rand, so he might be able to comment on that better. There's a good chance he's currently asleep, but if you join the Discord, you could talk to him tomorrow. Oh, okay. Hello. Yeah, arranged marriage societies are different to some extent. But they definitely had lots of like affairs and romances, and like a lot of stuff is still relevant. It's just that like a lot of time women were controlled by their fathers, so you had to gain social status with the father in order to get the marriage. Like if the woman is less of a decision maker, then your social status in her eyes is less relevant. Ground beefs? Oh, that's like actual grocery Amazon, not regular Amazon. Yeah, this was something I thought too. It's not a big deal, but don't be scared to use the main channels. I'm not picky about topics. Like, there's a lot of servers have topical channels like science or politics or psychology or something. which I don't like. Like all my channels are general purpose. Like you can talk about any sort of idea in any channel basically, which is very intentional. The only reason I actually made an off-topic channel was so I could ban people to it if I wanted to kick them out of all the regular channels if they were causing a lot of trouble. That was literally the motivation. You're welcome to use it in like it's whatever, but FI is fine as well. It doesn't really make that much difference. The main reason there's multiple channels is so people can avoid each other. Like if one discussion's going on and people don't want to scroll it up, they can use a different channel. Then after I had 2 regular channels, I started making channels that were like differentiated a little bit. Like the slow channel. Like instead of making FI3, I figured it'd be better to have one that's like you can put links here and they won't get scrolled away as fast. And then I made the one for trees and the non-overreaching one. Well, like everyone starts with they first get here and they don't know much about it and they can ask questions and try to learn things if they're interested. Right, so there's like a secret secondary purpose. Or was it secret or did you just not mention it yet? If you want to talk about this stuff in an impersonal way, one of the things you can do is you can find examples online, including Reddit is a good place. You can go to like our relationships and people will write about their relationships and you can get anecdotes and stories. Anyways, you can find like online examples from other people where they're writing about their lives, where you see things like a woman who you think is like different and rational or whatever, and then you can ask if there's anyone has criticism or they can see any social dynamics going on or anything like that. That way you can get like concrete examples that are realistic, but they're not about you. A lot of stories don't have much detail, but if you look around on the internet, it's possible to find stuff where there's like a lot of detail about some scenario, enough that gives you a decent amount of stuff to analyze. And it's often going to have some like biases and like the author's perspective is already built into it, but you can often still figure out a bunch of stuff about it anyways. They're usually not unique, and they're often not actually so trivial. Those would be my first guesses, but I don't know what it is, so I don't know. Making diagrams like this, you can do it with like Affinity Designer. I'm sure that OmniGraffle can do it, but I think that mind maps aren't going to do like a perfect job of this. I don't know. We can see what she made. These look fine. Yeah, I don't know what using latex is like. I haven't used it. I assume it's like not gonna make it super easy for a beginner. I've used GraphViz, but I found a bunch of problems with it. I didn't like it that much. It's good when there's like software tools that output to it. The first thing I would try for Anne actually is iThoughts. Wait, what the fuck? Why is her whole name not tagged? Is it glitchy? Wait, did it tag the A role? That shouldn't even be taggable. Server settings, roles, A. Allow anyone to mention this role. It's off. Try that again. No, it's still glitching. I don't know if you're gonna be able to automate exactly what she wants to do, because there's like positioning involved. But you can import Markdown into MindNode. I made a tool for automatically converting S expressions into GraphViz, but it's pretty limited. One of the problems with GraphViz is it doesn't do word wrap. You have to have your code actually manually add line wraps, which I didn't bother with yet. For what Anne's doing, she could just have the root node. Um, and put 3.1a as the root node and then have the expression under it and just like color it differently or whatever. But what she did is fine too. I take it that mine node lets you have multiple trees in the same file, so I assume this is just a different tree with one node. Anyway, like, most of the people aren't programmers, though, and I think they're better off just using a nice UI tool like this. Oh, oops. Mine, for a lot of purposes, this was pretty nice, and you can, like, like, see what you're doing while you do it. Like, the what you see is what you get can help people with, like, writing and figuring out what they want to write, because they can see the tree while they're writing, so it organizes it for them. Because if they have to, like, make the actual content in a text format, they're losing some of the advantages from, like, a brainstorming perspective. Yeah, this one's pretty nice. It just doesn't have a ton of features and customization. But if you want things that are reasonably basic, it works pretty well. And you can do things like copy all your nodes out and get them as a tab indented list. And it has a decent number of imports and exports. You lose like the coloring and stuff when you export, but you keep the main content. Yeah, OmniGraffle has a lot more features, and it's more of a generic flowcharting thing instead of this one is designed just for mind maps, basically. OmniGraffle is a lot uglier. I tried it a bit. I disliked various things about it. Like to import Markdown, you had to import it into Omni Outliner and then import the Omni Outliner file into OmniGraffle. And then like by default it would be kind of illegible and you had to fix a few things. It was a bit of a messy process. So it's like way more features but less user friendly. Oh, you can put a label on a connection? I didn't even know that. I'll admit I've not read the manual. Oh, you just double click on the connection and you can add a label. Oh, visual tags. Oh yeah, tags I knew about. Okay, those tags. Their tag system is recently added and very low on features so far, but it exists. This statement's kind of unclear because of the word your. I don't know if it means like Wisp's objective, or Freeze's objective, or a person in general. I think learning unwritten social rules is pretty valuable for most people. Learning to pick up women is more variable. Like some people are already married, for example, and some people are female. Most people read the book because they want to date women. So it's not like perfectly optimized from a philosophy perspective of just focusing on like the general issues. There just isn't a great book that's only focused on the general issues that I know of. So it has a bunch of dating stuff mixed in. But examples are useful anyway. So like going into detail on an example helps with understanding the general concepts. And it's an example that is relevant for a lot of people. I find that social dynamics are one of the most common things that ruin philosophy learning or philosophy discussion. Like they get in the way all the time. They often create a sort of distance with people where you feel like they have their walls up and you just can't be honest with them or they won't be honest with you. Like you can't really reach them and talk to them just like a person or something. It's hard to explain exactly what it is, but I think that's like a semi-common experience. Um, that people feel that way. I mean, I think people will feel that way even when they're also like kind of conventional about social stuff. Like you don't have to be exceptional to like have that problem with other people. There's a little bit of stream delay. I don't know what yes they do as a response to FYI. And like I don't know how much delay there is from when I talk to when you respond. Okay, caught up. Almost. Oh, Free said this a while ago. He outed you and I didn't even notice. Yeah, people can be easier to talk to when you have more history with them and there's more like trust or rapport or goodwill. But how do you build that up? Because like if you build that up with normal social interaction and just like friendly low substance stuff, that's a bit of a problem. Like to me that's boring and I don't want to do that with people. But if you just jump into the philosophy, then you're talking about philosophy before you have that prior relationship. I think that this is like an exaggeration. Friends cannot be like totally free and open with criticism. There are limits. It's like the limit expands when you have a better friendship. You can say more stuff, but there's still a limit. A lot of people run into this if they learn a bunch about FI. They find that then they start crossing the limit with their friends because they start saying things that are like outside of what their friends would expect or find normal. And like the more extreme or unusual your criticisms, then the harder it is. Yeah, some people do okay with philosophy stuff early on. It depends. Like some people are interested in it. sometimes trouble happens later. Usually you can eventually find something that's just someone's not willing to accept or think about. Like, there's usually something that's just like too taboo or line crossing or something, and it'll just alienate and offend someone, and eventually you find that thing and they quit and leave and won't deal with you anymore. That's my opinion about how people are. Most of them are not willing to say, like, well, I disagree with you about that topic and we're just going to avoid it and talk about all these other topics and keep going. Um, People will get like really hung up on the thing that bothers them. There's other things. It's not just topics that bother people, um like certain politics that they disagree with, or PUA stuff. It's also ideas can imply that a particular individual is irrational or dishonest or biased or things like that. And those kinds of messages can be really hard to hear, but sometimes they can't really be kept out of the conversation. Like if someone keeps saying things that are incompetent or stupid, or they don't know what they're talking about, or they're being dishonest or biased or something evasive, it can be very hard to continue the conversation without directly calling out and talking about those things. But a lot of times people don't want to deal with those messages. Like they'll say they just want to stay on the topic and keep the personal stuff out of it, but um it's problematic to do that when there's ongoing repeating patterns related to the individual's behavior and discussion methodology that are affecting the discussion. What the fuck? Why did it turn red? I think that's a Mac bug, because I occasionally see like weird red stuff on Mac. I don't know why. But I think it might not be Discord specific. I think I've seen it in Safari occasionally. Right, anyways. I believe I had a few things to read before I went. What is the internal struggle there? Like my first reaction to that is like who cares? It's just someone being dumb on the internet. That's like my first thought. Like there's plenty of people who hate abortion or don't understand evolution or whatever. Plenty of religious people. There's before it's trouble, you need some reason to like be involved or make it like harder to get out of the situation. Like if they're a coworker, it gets more awkward and they're like always bringing it up, you know? Or yeah, if you're attracted and like trying to flirt with them and then they say stuff like that, it causes trouble. And you're like, well, she's still hot, but she seems really dumb. And then you can have an internal conflict. A lot of guys just like put up with a bunch of SJW stuff that they really dislike because they figure they're not looking for marriage yet anyways, like they're college age or something. Um I think that's dangerous, and a lot of guys get like overly drawn into SJW stuff that way, like they end up changing a bit because they want to date the SJW women. I think that's part of how it spreads. No idea if that applies to you at all. That's just a general thing I've seen that I do not like. Different type of dumb, but yeah, I don't hear a lot about guys like pretending to be really religious and like getting drawn into religion. Okay, well we disagree about SJW. But anyways, I've heard a lot about guys getting drawn into SJW to fit in with women more. Wait, you say there's nothing wrong with it, and then you ask what it is? I don't get it, but it's social justice warrior. It's like aggressive lefty politics. Anyway, I think there's something interesting about how people get drawn into and pushed into the SJW stuff, but not the religion stuff in general from dating, I believe. There's some sort of cultural trend where left-wing views have more sort of mainstreamness to them that I think is bad, and there's a big imbalance there. I have not played MOBAs for a long time. I used to play Tides of Blood, which was a Warcraft 3 map that was much better designed than Dota. And I played Heroes of the Storm some. Back at the time long ago, I watched some Dota games and a little bit of Dota 2 and LoL, and I was not impressed with the gameplay. Like major game design problems, and also like I saw pro players doing things that if they were on my team in one of the games I was used to, I'd be like yelling at them. So I was like not impressed with the quality of the strategy. I assume it's improved by now over the years. I was terrible at shooters when I started. I had very little experience with them. What? Red again. Well, there's a lot of fundamental things where I do know what the rules are that I have major disagreements with. Like, the lane layout and the map layout I think is bad and very lazy and just copied from the original Dota in major aspects. And the last hitting system I think is terrible game design. And I think that there are systems that discourage pushing towers in the early game or just like winning the push in the lane. And I think that's bad. They should be designed so that pushing the creep wave gives you an advantage in early game. And that it's your goal to push it, not to freeze it or other things like that. One of the things Tides of Blood had as a game feature was when tower kills didn't give XP, so you got punished for getting pushed into your towers. I don't think these are just arbitrary preferences. There's well thought out game design philosophy about what makes a good game and why. Thoughts, I do not think that the tower design and the XP design for pushing lanes in the early game are very good. They have a lot of different maps though, and the lanes and layouts and stuff are interesting. There's a lot of variety. Yeah, I'm very familiar with that stuff. I do not think it's very good game design. Yes, I know. I'm very familiar with it. I played nothing but in-house private games for years with Tides of Blood. I'm used to like competitive stuff and optimizing and so on. Is this the current map? Because Freeze mentioned it changing with 3 lanes. And 2 bases. Yeah, this is not a very good main structure. It was just thrown together in Dota 1 with very little thought. One of the problems is that the lanes are too far apart. Another problem with these games is they have way too much emphasis on itemization and carrying with OP items. That's something Heroes of the Storm avoids nicely. Also, the reason people play these games so much primarily is because they find RTSs are too hard. They just don't want to have to control multiple units. Like, it's part of the casualization of gaming, and it's meant these games are designed to appeal to a very wide audience, which means that they can't actually be really good games because the majority like are stupid and don't want a proper challenge. Like, the popularity of League of Legends requires that the game pander to people's ego. No. Also, if you linked the map, it didn't show up. Just put it on Discord, because YouTube hates links. Are these towers? Yeah, I know Dota's less popular, but it's still quite popular. I know people think it's better than League, or like its fans do, but it really shares a lot of design features. Yeah, I think that this is just fundamentally broken and poorly designed in dozens of ways that Tides of Blood did much better um, back in the Dota 1 days. And the game designers for these games like literally are not familiar with the MOBA genre from back when it was called AOS, or don't understand it because there were a lot of AOS games and a lot of them had good features which are not seen in the genre today, and it's sad that people just ignore what was already figured out. If you're actually familiar with other ways of doing an AOS, you could make comparisons and find that some things are not just a matter of opinion. Like, there's objective truth about some things. Yeah, Tides of Blood has the double lane. It's a 6 vs 6 game, so you got 4v4 roaming from level 1 in the mid, while the outer lanes are 1v1 lanes. And it's not that far to go gank the outer lanes compared to Dota. And the outer lanes are extremely short because of the fortresses, which are very important things to defend. Like here, 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 here. So you got very short side lanes, which are where the pushes primarily happen. Also, these are vaults where you get income, and they're another thing you have to defend, so it's not just like your main base. You can get a large disadvantage if you only have your main base left in ways that are like more important and different than you see in the other MOBAs today. This game had a variety of flaws. It's quite old. It just has some design features were very good. Another thing it had was asymmetric heroes. So the undead team on the bottom had a completely different pool of heroes than the allies. that's something that's completely unnecessary. Like there's things that are nice about that and things that are bad about it. You can go either way. That's like an example of a there's room for variety kind of issue. The heroes and tides were extremely unbalanced. Like they weren't all equally good. The maiden was by far the best hero in the game. However, the overall, if you pick the best 6 allied heroes versus the best 6 undead heroes, it was like reasonably balanced, which is interesting when the heroes are very asymmetric like that. You actually sort of see that in LoL and stuff with like carries versus heroes that are good early game, rather than everything being kind of equal. You don't see that as much in Heroes of the Storm. In Heroes of the Storm, to a decent extent, everything scales up kind of evenly. Not entirely, but more so, I think. I don't know. Do you think all board games are equally good? Like, people put research and into figuring out how to make a good board game. And part of it is like what do people currently want? But that's not arbitrary either. Like it's not random. And part of it is they're trying to figure out like how to what's a good amount of complexity that's not too confusing and how do you make like game features that have like depth to them so you can achieve high levels of expertise rather than like mastering the game and like being done with it because there's nothing more to learn. Anyway, I think I've written some stuff about Tides of Blood, but I don't know where it is. One way you can see bad game design is you can take an existing game, then you can imagine adding a dumb rule. Like, suppose in Monopoly, you took one of the squares in the game. You said if you land on the square, you win the game. And that was the only change. Like, that would make it a dumb game, right? Like, you're playing for a while and you're trying to win the normal way. And then whoever happens to land on that square at some point wins. And you might land on that square on, like, your first time going around the map, and the game just ends early, right? So that would be terrible game design. Another example of bad game design is Quidditch from Harry Potter, which again has the dual win condition, where one can just override the other. So like in Monopoly, you're like, "Ooh, I've got all these hotels built up," and then the other guy lands on the auto win square. You're like, "That was lame. Like I was winning," and then it just didn't matter. It got overruled by the random luck of landing on that square. Well, in Harry Potter Quidditch, getting the snitch pretty much overrules the normal scoring. So it's sort of like there's two different games at the same time. There's like the regular game where they're trying to score baskets or whatever it is, and then the snitch is worth so many points that it just like makes all the baskets irrelevant when it gets found. Um, yeah, J.K. Rowling, in my opinion, does not know or care about the fantasy genre at all, or game design. What she knows is things like school and social dynamics, and how to appeal to like normal people. Yeah, I've read that as well. This mask debate is stupid. Like, they block a lot of particles. This has been scientifically tested. If the mask blocks like half the particles from getting to you, then it gives you some protection. In addition to protecting other people. What the fuck is this? 1969? Why is it telling me that there were comments since 1969? And why is this an overlay that won't go away? I'm just gonna reader mode this. I've been to this blog before and I don't remember that shit. One of the things about masks is I'm just really not convinced of any of the downsides. Like, I don't think masks are going to make it worse. I think they will help some amount, and we don't really know how much and what situations. And anyways, they'll clearly help you not infect others. Like, that's agreed on. If you cough or sneeze, the mask protects others, so that's good too. I don't get why people are so resistant to using masks. Control surgical N95% of catching shit. What's CRI? ILI? Any virus influenza. Well, it looks like it makes a difference. I don't know what these are though. God, I was reading stuff on Twitter today. Like multiple people basically saying I was really scared about the pandemic, but as a journalist, I didn't tell the public because I didn't want to be mocked and look dumb in front of my peers and so on. Like they just put social dynamics ahead of reality and medical dangers. I think that that's a common thing, and that it's the situation is so extreme that people actually openly admitted it and had the self-awareness to realize they did that. But I think it's like much, much, much more common than the admissions are. I think just the vast majority of the population is so focused on social stuff in general that it's very hard for them to switch into like facts and logic and evidence mode in a very thorough way. Like even most scientists are only ever sort of partially in that world. Some people like they sort of turn it on when they go to work and turn it off when they get home. But a lot of scientists they have to deal with like getting grant funding and keeping their boss happy, and there's like office politics and all kinds of crap as well. And it's like who gets a higher course load can depend on social networking and stuff. And I know that Aubrey de Grey has said one of the things that keeps rich people from donating for anti-aging medical research is that their wives disapprove. That's like a common problem he's run into. Because women in general, on average, are significantly more conformist and risk averse and mainstream and stuff. And so they're a lot more likely to dislike something unusual like anti-aging. And they play a role of getting their spouses to conform more. Is a really common relationship dynamic. Wait, did he ever say what CRI or ILI are? Oh, there's a link. Nope, no megalith. The maps I played the most are Vampire Hunters was interesting. It had major similarities to a MOBA, but major differences. It was 5v5 and you controlled one hero. And you could go around the map and have team fights. However, instead of lanes with creeps, there were towns with villagers, and the vampires would kill the villagers, which spawned souls. And then the souls would... You kill the souls, and the zombies go and attack the town in the center, which is what the good guys have to defend. And then killing the souls lets you summon monsters during the night to go attack. So instead of... And the defenders can buy guards. So instead of like lanes with symmetric pushing, there's summoning monster waves that you like decide what to summon when, and the vampires are on a time limit to kill the village of like 12 days or something. So it was a significant change to the non-hero part of a MOBA, and I thought it was a really good game, and I've never seen any clones of it. Yeah, it was asymmetrical. It wasn't very much like a board game though, because it was like a Warcraft 3 hero battle thing where you have normal heroes that level up and get abilities and items. And you can like 5-on-5 battle like a hero arena. But then you have the whole running around and killing the villagers. The vampire base was in one corner of the map, and then it let them teleport to the other three corners. There were, or you could walk out the gate. So they had access to all four corners, and then there were villages around the map, and the more villagers you can run around and kill quickly, the better. So there's like a large incentive to split up. However, the hunters, dying is really bad as vampires. Like you have to limit your deaths. I forget exactly why, but I think there were some like significant penalties for dying beyond just losing a little bit of time and leveling up the allies a little bit. So like getting caught and getting killed was quite bad. So the hunters can like, if you just split up all as one, then the hunters can roam around as like pairs of two and have a good chance to kill people if they catch them. But it's all real time, and like, and then you have to go like have your hero battle in the middle of the giant hordes of zombies and shit getting summoned and walking into the base and fighting the guards. One of the interesting strategy parts was when you should skip a night and not summon and just save for later. But there's limits on the monsters you can summon, like how many are in stock for every night. So you can't just like save them all up for the last night. Plus, if you wait too long, the defenders get like high level, and so there's some advantages to trying to attack early before they're all set up. But if you attack every night, you don't get big enough waves, generally. Clinical or respiratory infection, influenza, illness. Wait, influenza is here twice? That's weird. But okay, at all 4 relevant things, the N95 did the best, and no mask did the worst. Alright, well, I'll do a search. ILI. Yeah, wait, is it searching? Third. No, it's not searching. Open in preview. Okay, ILI. Way too small text. Okay, so they don't tell me what it means. Do they have their chart? I'm looking for the chart. Is this actually the source? No, the chart's not here. His link doesn't have this chart. I don't know where he got this chart. Or why he doesn't even bother saying what the abbreviations mean. Seems kind of bad. Can I make this, like, not play? This does not clearly say he made it from the data. And he doesn't say, like, he should be giving page numbers and saying what data he used from where. I think this is really poor attribution. GIF autoplay, let's see. Text and images. Oh, play animated emoji. That's not it. There we go. Oh, so do I mouse to play? Mouse over to play. Alright, that's reasonable. That's way better. Shitty default. If it just play once and stop, it would be an okay default. Like one autoplay loop and then stop. Or even like 10 instead of infinite would be a lot better. Or like a time limit, 1 minute of autoplay loops and then stop. I just don't like the infinite. I don't know, I linked the... You can get it from here. I just clicked on the thing that he linked to. State-of-the-art review, face mask for the prevention of infection and healthcare and community settings. So it's a different thing than you found. Did you get the chart from this? It is influenza illness. Why would they have influenza illness and influenza on the same chart as different things? And if This is not the same chart anyways. Oh, this is good. They tested people and right, if you can smell it, you're not airtight. People could test themselves at home. Like there's ways they could test themselves. Most people won't do a good job, but some people could do it. Most doctors aren't very good with them. That seems very plausible. Oh, 65% of doctors fail versus 76% of the general public. Yeah, I can believe that. I'm gonna disagree and say fuck the CDC. I don't think they were intentionally lying to trick us. Right. I think they're just unreasonable, incompetent, stupid, dangerous, etc. But like if they were intentionally lying to trick us and like manipulate us, that would involve them being sort of competent in a way. Like they were actually organized and knew what they were doing and had a goal and were trying to achieve the goal and trying to take steps to that fit their goal, and I don't attribute that to them very well. Like, I think they're bad at getting the right hand and the left hand to do the same thing, so they're not in a good position to be like puppet masters who are pulling all your strings and manipulating you. This is actually plausible that part of what's going on is they have very high standards for what works, and if it's not like super proven to work according to their standards, they're just like, fuck it, don't use it. Because this fits with what they're doing to the general public, where they're like preventing the creation of a lot of hand sanitizer, masks, and COVID tests. They're slowing all that stuff down. They're still regulating it quite a lot. They've cut some of the red tape out, but there's still a lot left. They just like don't trust people, and they're like follow all the high standards. And it's stupid in a situation where like people are dying, so they'd be better off with shoddy stuff than nothing. But that sort of fits with a reasonable explanation of what sort of people these are. They're very like ass covering, I think. I don't think medical workers in general are really buying masks from retail outlets. Yeah, alcohol is good at killing the virus. That's my understanding. So that should work okay. You should be able to sanitize things with it. One of my opinions is that people should be looking for ways to do more, not less. Don't look to cut corners. Don't look to figure out what's unnecessary and what can I get away with not doing. Look to figure out how to be safer and shit. Like, instead of looking for what we don't need to do, look for more things you could do. What can you add to what you're doing to be even safer? Let's like start there, and when we run out of ideas and we're getting really annoyed with all the precautions, we could start figuring out which precautions to get rid of. But a lot of people, like, their first thing is like, can I get away with going on walks outside and not wearing masks? And going to spring break. As like, you have the wrong attitude if that's what you're looking at first. Freeze, he's in a different country than you, so that's a relevant factor. FYI. Alright, stream should end pretty soon, but I'm gonna look at this one a little bit, because I never read much of it. This is very important, I think. Hospitals being overwhelmed is really bad. We should avoid that. This guy's not giving enough details to like be very convincing. Like, he might be right, but I don't know, and he isn't. He's acting like he knows what he's talking about, but he's not proving it. But he wants herd immunity, but I saw an estimate from somewhere, I haven't really checked it, that to get to herd immunity without overwhelming the hospitals takes like over 10 years. So I don't know what he's talking about. Let's work to herd immunity. If it's over 10 years, like, did he even do an estimate of how long it takes? I don't think he wants to overwhelm the hospitals. He's saying like don't prevent too many infections, but if you prevent enough to not overwhelm the hospitals, then you don't get herd immunity anytime soon, as far as I know. He's not giving any actual timelines or numbers or estimates. Okay, and I already read the ending. Yeah. So he didn't even do like back of the envelope math. So I don't think he actually has said anything that really changes what we should do. This is a ridiculous. How many children have been tested? Like, so many places are only testing people when they're like hospitalized. So if the children are getting milder cases and not ending up in hospital, it doesn't mean they're not getting the disease. It just means they're not getting tested. They have stronger immune systems in certain ways. Like, their immune systems are different. They definitely have advantages. I don't know, just saying they don't have stronger immune systems, I think is misleading based on my medical and virus knowledge and stuff. Which isn't a huge amount, but he's just flatly contradicting what I've read and learned about without source or explanation. Like, my understanding is children rely more on the the generic immune system instead of the adaptive one in the memory cells. This doesn't even say if 13% would be like overrepresenting them or underrepresenting them in the cases. It's not very good context. Like, I think this blogger is just not great. Oh, that's like a main page. This is not influenza. Right. Oh wait, he believes in the two-strain thing here? I've read some stuff. I think the two strains, from what I've read, are just crap. They're like poorly differentiated. It was unclear that they actually have different antigens, and it seemed like a bit of an arbitrary distinction. There's like over 100 minor mutations of COVID that are documented, and from what I read, the way they divided them into two strains was just dumb. And the paper this was based on shouldn't have been published. I haven't looked into it carefully, but my quick impression was the critics were probably right. It's posted somewhere in my blog info thread. Alright, that's enough of that. I only checked the stats like once today, so I'll give another look. Oh, yesterday. 400 in America. A lot of people dying. China stats and Iran stats are not accurate. I do not believe them. I don't know, like, by what amount they're lying. Like, are they underestimating it like 20% or like 5,000%? But I don't believe their numbers. Even American Italy, there's a bunch of bits of news and stories and anecdotes and stuff indicating there's underestimates as well as delays in reporting numbers. Sometimes they just won't even count it as COVID unless there's actually a positive test, even if it looks like COVID. Alright, well, good night, guys.